Regressor of the Fallen Family. Chapter 34. The man who entered through door number 34 was a dignified, middle-aged man with graying hair. Dressed in a crisp suit and possessing a face aged with elegance, he could easily pass for a noble based on his appearance alone. However, his deep bow upon seeing Logan and Philip immediately suggested someone accustomed to serving others. Our master has instructed me to purchase a medicine called Impo-Rick here. And this master would be? Philip stepped forward, intrigued, as Logan observed the middle-aged man. Regrettably, I have been told not to disclose their identity. The man's uneasy demeanor revealed he was unsure why he was there. Just as I expected. Though Logan had anticipated this when he opened the shop, he couldn't just sell the medicine outright. At Logan's signal, Philip stepped forward as planned. I'm sorry, but we only sell to nobility whose identities have been verified. What do you mean by that? If they cannot come personally, at least bring a document bearing their seal. This might have seemed like an absurd requirement, but it was necessary. We need to create the impression that it's a premium product not just anyone can buy. Despite the risk of offending the nobility, it was important to emphasize that the medicine wasn't to be distributed lightly. Here, this is the certificate. The middle-aged man returned later, sweating profusely, and presented a certificate. He must have never imagined needing such a document for a purchase. Logan confirmed the noble seal on the certificate. As expected, the seal was a lily, belonging to the Davis County. They were the first to take the bait. Upon Logan's nod, Philip addressed the man again. Did you bring the money? Yes, I brought it all in cash, as instructed. In truth, for such a large sum, and in the capital, a bank deposit certificate would have sufficed. The insistence on cash suggested a desire to leave no trace. The man took out a heavy pouch of gold coins from his backpack. Thud. It's 10,000 gold. I was told this is the price for 100 boxes. You heard wrong. It's the price for 10. Perhaps you should check again. It was unlikely such an experienced servant misunderstood his master's instructions. The price of 1,000 gold per box must have seemed unbelievable. Ah, yes, now I remember. 10 boxes, that's right. Here you are, sir. The boxes, too light and small compared to the weight of the gold pouch, were wrapped in luxurious silk, but probably cost about 1 gold each to produce. The middle-aged man looked bewildered as he alternated his gaze between the boxes and the pouch. Is there a problem? Is this really Impo-Rick? Yes, it's the same as what we gave to your master. He'll confirm it for you. With a sigh, the man left the shop with drooping shoulders. Logan and Philip, left in the shop, high-fived, sensing a business boom. You should go to the party. Of course, another busy day ahead. Logan's eyes, once weary from repetitive work, now sparkled with energy. From that day, the small but luxurious shop began to attract more customers. A week later, in the heart of the inner city, the small shop with no sign, but just a nameplate reading Logan McLean, started to see lines forming from morning. Most of the people in line were familiar faces to Logan and Philip, indicating repeat customers, a key to a successful business. Though the real customers were their masters. Everyone sends only their servants, but what's the use? The servants whispered among themselves. Count Hammer too? Why is Baron Talon here? Look, there's the butler of the Davis County. While Logan couldn't identify their masters by face, the servants recognized each other, spreading the word even faster. Exactly what Logan had intended. Is that shop selling medicine for 1,000 gold per box? What? Those lunatics. But it's said to be highly effective. And so, the rumor of Impo-Rick, an extraordinary tonic for men, spread rapidly throughout the Grandia. Wow, we sold out again today. The first week saw a total of 100 boxes sold. But in the following week, sales soared to 350 boxes, hitting the daily limit. Logan's face brightened with success. So many impotent nobles. Not all of them. It's also a good tonic, right? It's their greed that's making us money. It's that greed. Logan, you said you'd let me handle the sales? It seems like it'll end up that way. You're almost doing it already. Why? There's just over half of your stock left. Can I set the prices tomorrow? You want to set the prices? Changing a well-selling product's price was risky, but Philip had led one of the top 10 merchant groups in his past life. Go ahead, but if it seems to go wrong, don't worry, it will work out. The next morning, 3,000 gold. Why has the price tripled overnight? Philip had to turn away many customers throughout the morning. Philip, what are you thinking? If you triple the price, it will still sell. Just watch. Despite Logan's doubts, Philip's confidence was unwavering. His prediction proved correct by the afternoon. 1 box, please. 2, no, 3. That's it for today. Please come back tomorrow. The popularity of Impo Rick did not wane. Wow, 2.55 million gold in just 4 weeks. And the cost is almost. Even Philip, who orchestrated this, was astounded. Logan, on the other hand, was overjoyed. We did it. Though risky, the plan, based on information from his past life, was a tremendous success, especially since Philip had raised the revenue to 2.1 million gold in just 2 weeks with the new pricing. What about you, Philip? Any concerns? Well, I was wondering, this has no side effects, right? No, not that I know of. Philip's worry seemed to grow. If something goes wrong. If something goes wrong, 1,000 or 3,000 gold won't make a difference. We need to make money while we can, but still. Recognizing Philip's burden, Logan decided to motivate him. From next month, 1% of the sales revenue is yours. Philip's eyes lit up. Really? Yes. Now do your best. With renewed vigor, Philip committed to the task. 700 boxes of Impo Rick remained. Even if more were sent from the main house, sales would have to pause for 1 to 2 weeks due to the supply shortage. But Philip saw even this positively. A 1-2 week break will increase Impo Rick's value. Of course, we can't let this happen often. Logan smiled, trusting his capable partner. Now it was time to use the profits for future plans. Should I stop by there on the way back? No, I should involve the family. Having achieved one goal, Logan began to focus on future tasks. Just for today, let's not think about anything. Concentrate. As Logan settled into his meditation, he sensed a faint presence. A thief. His reaction was swift. He grabbed his sword and turned towards the sound. Who's there? But there was no one. Sensing someone behind him, Logan spun around and struck with his sword. His surprise was evident. The intruder, a masked figure, vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Was it a ghost? But the piece of black cloth from the intruder's sleeve on his bed confirmed it was real. What was that? Regressor of the Fallen Family. Chapter 35. The next morning. Unable to hide his astonishment, Philip looked at Logan after hearing his words. A thief, you say? And even you couldn't catch them, young Lord Logan? Indeed. I couldn't lay a finger on them, nor sense their movements. That person must be at least a high-level force user, if they can elude you. It's strange for someone like that to resort to thievery. Philip's impression of Logan's realm was simple, having only heard about it in stories. But for Logan, it wasn't something to accept so lightly. His senses were amplified several times over during meditation. Even with his physical abilities and senses elevated by the force core and the concentration brought through meditation, he barely felt a presence. That's not just high level. It's at least top-tier force user. No, even that doesn't suffice. It wasn't merely a sensation of a high level. It felt like a completely different class. Could it be? Underestimating an enemy is a problem, just as overestimating can be. Hence, Logan tried not to jump to premature conclusions, but his intuition was suggesting that this unprecedented guess might be accurate. A force user? As a thief? That's nonsense. The ridiculous thought made him snicker involuntarily. Having obtained the power of aura, capable of tearing through everything, which set them beyond the limitations of an ordinary force user, an individual of such caliber could become a noble of a territory in an instant, or even earn a title of countdom if they went to the empire. And yet, such an aura user resorted to mere thievery. Philip, too, scoffed with an incredulous expression. Come now, young Lord Logan. Don't go too far with such ludicrous talk. Just check if anything is missing instead. Not much is missing, though. Not much, you say? Did we pack the Impo Rick correctly? Of course. We were going to sell it to the nobles, so we checked it multiple times. Eh? No way. 2 Impo Rick pills are missing from a box. It's an ambiguous detail that's quite bothersome, but that's all there is. One would expect the entire box to be stolen. Just opening the packaging to take only 2 pills was too bizarre. It's possible we packed it wrongly, but it seemed more likely that the thief had taken them out. But connecting that inference with the previous guess only led to a more bizarre conclusion. An aura user stole precisely 2 aphrodisiacs. For what purpose? An aura user who reached the pinnacle of force and harnessed the superior aura powers would typically have tremendous physical capabilities, even virility. Hence, a typical aura user often had numerous concubines and, in many cases, dozens of children. But an aura user needing an aphrodisiac? No. Imporic isn't just an aphrodisiac, though it's advertised as a miracle elixir that could even heal physical impotence. Could it be? Once again, it was merely intuition, without concrete evidence. Yet following that shining premonition, Logan spoke to Philip. Those records, were there aura users in them? That's confidential, you have to pay extra. You declined, young Lord Logan, saying we didn't need it. Ah, yes. Then, didn't you say you knew everything already and it wasn't necessary? What? In the capital, there's precisely 1 aura user without offspring. Ah. Logan's memory was of distant recollections. He hadn't paid attention to the absolute powerhouses since he believed there would be no connection for a while, but now it suddenly came back to him. There were 5 aura users in the Grandia Kingdom, with only 2 residing in the capital. Among them was certainly one such individual. A typical aura user with a powerful physique would boast abundant virility, yet there was one without any descendants. Giggles. Catch me if you can! Wah! Mommy! Nurse, he hit me! Wah! The frolicking children on the streets were lively. Watching over them, even from afar, made for a heartwarming scene. But the face of a middle-aged man observing from a mansion window was tinged with bitterness. Children, a life without regrets. One he could proudly declare. Most people who knew him would say the same. The only blemish on his triumphant life was the absence of children. That was it. Of course, he never showed that side to anyone. Having merely one regret in life meant, inversely, how fortunate he was. He wasn't greedy or insufficiently cultivated to not realize that, but sometimes, like now, when he caught sight of such bright and lovable children, a pang of longing would jab his heart with the sharpness of a needle. Despite his efforts to look away, all he could muster was a wry smile. What are you looking at? At that moment, a lovely, familiar voice made him hastily turn around. Oh, my wife. I was just admiring the scenery outside for a bit. It seems I carelessly left the window open in this chilly breeze. Let's go inside. He felt ridiculous calling the warm breeze of county summer chilly. His wife's eyes were already holding the children outside in their gaze. You, again. The pain that flickered in those large eyes stung his heart even more. So before she could finish speaking, he hastily took the initiative. No, I was simply enjoying the external view. Don't worry about it. Come, let's go inside. The origin of the pain was his own doing. He was bringing it up again and disturbing it. Hiding his darkened expression, he turned around quickly, but suddenly. Delicate arms wrapped around his chest from behind. Honey, I'm truly happy to have met you. You know that, right? He momentarily raised his head and stared at the ceiling to suppress the welled-up emotions. I feel the same. His response was a bit delayed, but it was filled with sincere truth. Then don't be so pained. We're together, aren't we? It was such a precious sentiment, yet he couldn't face his wife. He felt tears might fall once more, now that he had aged quite a bit. So all he did was stroke the soft hands clinging to his chest and glare at the innocent ceiling. Felix Esperanza. The pain that lingered in the heart of the man known as the kingdom's greatest swordsman began with an injury in his youth. During a battle for his country, he happened to damage his groin, a critical flaw for a man. But in his younger days, he barely minded it. He lived as he wished, suffered the injury doing what he wanted to do. A knight got hurt during his duty. It's an honorable wound. Though it wasn't a part of his body he could boast about, he wasn't embarrassed. It was just a pity. That was what he thought. But as time passed and he aged little by little, the regret etched deeply in his heart began to ache sharply. I need to leave an offspring. It hit him in his 50s when he was recognized as the kingdom's strongest, and his fame began to peak. What's the use of elevating a baron's house to that of a duke and spreading your fame across the country if your lineage had no heir? It all felt vain. When he was younger, the regret even spurred him on to train more. It was around this time that he began to perceive his longing as a real pain. Then he met his current wife. At first he thought it was simply out of pity. He just wanted to restore light in the eyes of a prime-aged maiden who looked as if she was dying inside. Felix didn't realize it was love, but she was too grateful, and beyond that, she actively expressed her affection. Even when embarrassed, he spoke candidly about his weaknesses. How much did you suffer? Seeing her weep more painfully than he did, he felt the regret, which he thought was just sorrow in his heart, washing away. Only then did he truly understand love and recognized his pain. If you're okay with it, please allow me to serve by your side. I'll repay this kindness for a lifetime. An exceptional person. An overwhelming love, he thought. It even led to engagement, defying the objections of his retainers. And so he had already spent more than a decade with his wife. It was undoubtedly a happy time, but the ache in his heart had not completely vanished. Actually, because everything was so perfect, he couldn't help but keep noticing that one shortfall. That's why he sometimes made such foolish mistakes like this one. Cough, cough. I'll go take a look at work, my wife. I might be a bit late. Are you really okay? Of course, who do you think I am? Don't worry. Felix, nearly of septuagenarian age, boasted with all his might in front of his wife, as if he were a young boy. Preventing himself from showing tears was 100 times better. That concludes the regular report. You've done well. Though the periodic report on the territory had come to an end, the adjutant did not move, obviously having something more to say. Luis, speak up if you have something to say. Your Excellency, it's just that. It's about that matter again. The adjutant hesitated to bring up the subject, causing Duke Felix's brows to furrow deeply. The issue with adopting a son again. The retainer's urging has been quite persistent. Do those people actually wish for my county demise? That couldn't be. They're just concerned about the future of the house. Humph. I care not. How many times must I say this? When it's my time to go, those bastards in the collateral branch might already be having grandchildren. And now they're harrying me to decide on an heir? He was nearing his 70s, but the outward appearance of the Duke, hailed as the strongest aura user in the kingdom, didn't look a day over his 40s. So his bluff wasn't entirely false. Yet no aura user could stay forever young, not unless one became an aura master of legend. Typically, aura users age rapidly at some point in life and pass away. The retainers who knew this couldn't help but feel insecure. But obviously Luis couldn't just say, because we don't know when you might die. So the adjutant remained silent again. Duke Felix understood the retainer's position as well. He was aware that he was pushing the issue, but not yet. It's not time yet. Adopting a son felt like a declaration of surrender to the deeply rooted yearning in his heart. Despite knowing there was no other way, he really did not want to. Not yet. I want to wait a bit longer. No matter how foolish, no matter how silly it seemed. Speaking of which, Your Excellency, I am hesitant to mention this, but what now? Recently, an efficacious drug gaining fame in the capital has emerged. A drug? It is called Impo-Rick, an apparently potent medicine for men. The adjutant braced for his superior's reproach, but the reaction was unexpectedly calm. Luis, emboldened, quickly followed up with the most crucial information he had. People say it's such a miracle drug that it can heal even physical wounds. Ah, of course, I know you don't believe it, but word has it that those who've used it are seeing great effects. Ha ha. Watching the adjutant hang his head, Felix just let out an exasperated laugh. How could he not understand that his adjutant spoke with sincerity? But he was already familiar with those rumors. In fact, I've already tried it. A memory of the previous night crept up, heating his cheeks. He saw his wife last evening, crying as she watched children play in the setting sun outside the window. At that moment, his years of discipline crumbled. Driven by emotion and allowing instinct to take over, he committed a theft he had never attempted in his life. The 2 Impo-Rick pills obtained through that shameful act were already inside him. But no miracle had occurred. Luis, filter out the rumors before you listen to them. If Aura can't fix it, how could some mere medicine? That one foolish act of blind hope was enough. My apologies. The day's work seemed to end with such a ludicrous event. Your Excellency, a visitor from outside. That was until a knight brought in a disconcerting message. Regressor of the Fallen Family, Chapter 36. Chapter 36. Who has come to visit? Well, it's a man named Logan McLean. He came without an appointment and insists on speaking with my lord, pushing quite aggressively for a mention. Upon hearing this, Felix's expression notably hardened, and the knight, witnessing this, also wore an increasingly stern look. I apologize. I will send him away immediately. No, let him in. Excuse me? The knight's eyes widened at the unexpected response. He let him in. With a low voice reverberating, Logan was able to enter the modest-looking office. Unlike the usual Nobleic offices filled with paintings, pottery, and lavish decorations, this one was furnished with simple pieces. A handsome, middle-aged man with a golden beard that reached his chin sat by the window, through which sunlight streamed, his friendly eyes notable. As soon as Logan saw him, he bowed his head. I'm honored to meet the Sword Sage. I am Logan McLean, the eldest son of the McLean clan. McLean? Isn't that the territory in the southwest? What brings the son of that region all this way? The voice that matched the stately appearance. He looked about 40 or 50, but that was due to his powerful aura suppressing his aging. In truth, he was nearly 70, an old sword sage. Felix Esperanza, respected as the strongest sword sage in the Grandia kingdom. As Felix's solemn gaze fixed upon Logan, he remembered the warning voice of Philip before coming here. Anyway, I'm not going. Absolutely not. If something happens to you, Logan, I'll pretend I know nothing. You got that? Philip hadn't understood Logan's confidence about seeking out the Sword Sage. To put it dramatically, what Logan intended to do was akin to knocking on the door of one of the kingdom's most powerful and superhuman figures, and saying, "Are you perhaps impotent? And did you steal my goods yesterday?" That was essentially the plan. You're just inviting trouble. We could have ignored the whole thing. If things go wrong, we're screwed. Although Philip wasn't really wrong to worry. But if that man truly was the Sword Sage, then this was an opportunity that Logan couldn't miss. The chance to form a good connection with one of the country's highest authorities. Such a chance was certainly worth taking a gamble on. I don't have to bring up yesterday's incident. If he truly is the Sword Sage and the rumors are true, then Logan had a way to fix it. Philip might think it was just another tall tale, but the effects of the remedy were unquestionably real. Of course, the 2 doses he had taken the previous day would not have been enough to see a proper effect. The problem is figuring out whether the thief from yesterday was really the Sword Sage. Even facing him directly, Logan still had no absolute certainty. After all, who could comprehend why a man of Sword Sage's stature would personally carry out such an act? However, the mere fact that Sword Sage Felix agreed to meet with a no-name countryman at the drop of a hat added to Logan's confidence in his assumptions. And Logan had come with the perfect gift, assuming all his conjectures were correct. It is an honor to meet you, and this is. No sooner had Felix finished speaking than Logan quickly retrieved a box from his pocket. I've recently started a business in the capital, and on the way to see you, I brought this gift." Despite it seeming customary to offer a reply, Sword Sage remained silent. Felix observed Logan in the box without any discernible emotion in his eyes. However, Logan, undaunted, walked confidently towards him. "The product I sell is called Impo-Rick, a tonic. Its effectiveness is proven through various nobles, and it's already guaranteed to be an excellent drug for men." "Is that so?" Felix's voice, deep and discharged, was unmistakably uninterested. Yet Logan's following words caused a slight tremor in the Sword Sage's blue eyes. "But such things are hardly necessary for a superhuman like you, my lord. Hence, I prepared a more special item." Upon seeing this, Logan silently cheered within. "I was right." Lear, his indifferent expression was probably due to the ineffectiveness of Impo-Rick. Given the way Impo-Rick worked, it naturally made sense. The flesh of the monster Karok contained toxins, and the cost-effective antidote mitigated its toxicity without harming people. However, a slight toxicity remained, mixing with the flesh's composition to act both as an aphrodisiac and a remedy for sexual dysfunction. This function was so powerful that, in that particular area, it even seemed to have restorative effects. But what if it met a superhuman or a user of aura? That minute level of toxicity would have had no impact on such a sturdy constitution. Hence, the solution was simple. Concentrate the toxin to an extreme degree. Click. Logan, smiling, opened the lid of the small box. "This is the very..." Inside was a pill, ornately wrapped in gold leaf, a special limited edition. Felix let out a single, complex sigh. Little did he know, the special limited edition was merely 50 pills condensed into one, with gold leaf as nothing more than fancy packaging. I had my share of hardships swallowing it. The agonizing pain in his stomach, and the part of him that refused to settle. Recalling the hardships he endured through self-experimentation just before coming here made Logan briefly break into a sweat. Had it been an average person, they would likely have died when, even as a possessor of the Force Core, he had struggled so much. But for an aura user, he doubted the toxin would cause any internal pain. At that point, only the effectiveness would remain. The miraculous effect wrought by the flesh of a monster, a creature not fully understood even in his previous life. This gave Logan the confidence to extend the offer. "It may not catch your eye, but please consider it a token of my concern for your Excellency's health." "That's all you seek? Nothing more? If you have any wishes, feel free to voice them." This seemed to suggest hidden implications, but Logan's response had no hesitation. Bringing up last night's incident or making demands would spoil everything. Now it was enough merely to continue the connection with Sword Sage Felix. Logan bowed his head with such a thought. Even as he bowed, he could feel the Sword Sage's perturbation. A moment of silence passed, long enough despite its brevity. "Huff, huff. Since it's for my health, I'll gratefully accept your gift." It was the moment when Logan's fists clenched with resolve. I've passed the first hurdle. They had tacitly acknowledged each other's knowledge about the previous night's events, and yet had avoided discussing it, establishing a fresh connection instead. What was left was merely to wait for the result. If by any chance you find satisfaction after trying it, please mention it to me. I am willing to supply as much as you need, always maintaining strict confidentiality. Even as he took his leave, Sword Sage's expression did not seem utterly positive. But the Sword Sage's messenger looked for Logan the very next day. Same place, same time, a different day brought a Sword Sage with a much brighter expression. Logan smiled at the striking contrast to the previous day's mood. "What do you desire?" Before Logan could even introduce himself, Sword Sage Felix opened with an astonishing prompt. "Excuse me? Do you wish for something? Within my capabilities, I will grant any request." Sword Sage's voice conveyed an eagerness that almost felt too friendly. Caught off guard by the unexpectedly proactive approach, Logan hesitated briefly. The Sword Sage was still vividly recalling the unusual sensation from that morning. The effect is present. Still, as an accomplished martial artist and master of the life-giving force, the aura, he could tell with certainty. This strange drug had given his long unresponsive body a positive stimulus, and he could imagine what change might follow from this stimulus. With roughly 30 more uses, I can be restored. Each thought made his clenched hands tremble with the anticipation of resolving deep-seated regret and long-held resentment. He didn't need to maintain emotional equilibrium cultivated over decades of training, not when his heart was racing with the joy bestowed by hope. So, how could he not be grateful for the young man before him? He didn't even bring up my mistake. An insightful young man who had come to him on the slimmest evidence, without showing his intent, and instead presenting a gift. Plus, the outstanding sword skill he had observed the other day surpassed what one could expect for his age. Truly, he was a promising young talent worthy of miraculous elixir. Such generosity is overwhelming. Please tell me why at least. Being humbled, even with such talent, was commendable. Marvelous. Felix, who always had a soft spot for extraordinary youths, felt even more gratified. Ha! I guess I was too eager. Well, the gift you presented yesterday has shown the possibility of healing my long-standing pain. Therefore, I wish to repay you. Yesterday's gift. The mention of the drug's effect would normally have been embarrassing, especially so for someone with a social status like Sword Sage. However, the countenance he wore as he said it shone genuinely bright. Looking at Sword Sage's expression, Logan gained another assurance. The rumors appear to be true indeed. Truthfully, Logan, while selling Impo Rick, held a disdainful view of the nobility that crazed over it, believing that only those with promiscuous lives or intentions would purchase the drug. Yet he had to acknowledge anew that there might indeed be legitimate therapeutic uses. Very well. Do you have any requests for me? Speak frankly. Snapped back from his momentary reverie by Sword Sage's pressing voice, Logan's sense of reality returned. The Sword Sage is capable of many things. The range of things that the man could do was enormous, even by simple reckoning. It was a huge windfall, and at that thought, Logan's fists clenched again. But this is too much in return for just supplying Impo Rick. That's why he couldn't simply seize this opportunity without restraint. Logan subdued his elated heart to calmness. His aim was a lasting connection with Sword Sage Felix, a figure who maintained a paramount noblaic position even after internal strife. Also, the kingdom's mightiest sword during the war against the Empire, halting an imperial army of 100,000 with merely his knights for over a week. What Logan sought was the person himself, Sword Sage Felix, the highest noble and the most powerful aura user in the current kingdom. Therefore it was. There's something I thought I'd ask for as insurance. To lay the groundwork for an ongoing connection, it was best to show a willingness to take a calculated loss. On his way there, Logan had considered a proposal he now brought forward. If you insist, would it be possible to obtain an unused sword manual? What? Sword Sage questioned his own hearing at the request. Perhaps you misspoke about an intermediate-level sword manual? I mentioned an unused manual. It could be low-level. However, it would be preferable if it came with a confirmation from the Duke. Huh? The request seemed utterly absurd to Sword Sage, not least because the vast chasm between basic sword skills that train the body and lay the foundation and intermediate-level sword skills used by aura users was beyond description. Had he asked for an intermediate-level sword manual, Sword Sage would have comprehended. Though he couldn't teach the secret techniques of the Esperanza Knights, among the manuals he had collected were several quite decent intermediate-level sword techniques. But low-level ones? Almost any favor or request for money would have been acceptable. Disappointing, yes, but this was beyond what Sword Sage had fathomed, an unimaginable request. Yet somehow it didn't displease him. Why? I simply wish it as a testament that our McLean family has connected with the Sword Sage. A connection, you say? For the Sword Sage, that sounded as absurd as it gets. Owning one of his sword manuals wouldn't create any special relationship. After all, many had learned from the sword manuals he had accumulated or perfected with his touch evident even on the Grandia Kingdom's sword technique, deemed the foundation for all kingdom knights. Based solely on a sword manual, near every knight in the country had the right to call themselves his disciple. So for him, it was more about feeling apologetic than anything else. Rather than that, I'll pass on a suitable intermediate-level sword manual. If you want, I can even teach you personally. An exceptionally generous offer, and Logan seemed momentarily affected before he responded again. If it's about intermediate-level sword skills, I believe our McLean family's technique isn't lacking either. It was an empty boast. Regressor of the Fallen Family. Chapter 37. The True McLean Swordsmanship that once upheld the Count's household. The true McLean swordsmanship that once supported the old Count's family had long since lost its lineage. The McLean swordsmanship currently practiced by the knights of the McLean family is merely a shell of its former self, essentially intermediate level in name only. Logan simply had his own reasons for refusing, but those who heard could not discern his underlying motives. If you really want that, well, there's nothing I can do. If that's truly sufficient for you, then follow me. Logan's request turned out to be a very simple task for the sword sage, just as he had anticipated. Have you arrived? But who is that behind you? He is my guest. Pardon? The sword sage himself brought someone to the sparring ground he so cherished, referring to the young whelp as his guest, no less. The knights guarding the training ground widened their eyes in shock. What are you doing? Open the way, we have business? Yes. At the sword sage's prompt, the knights snapped to attention and began moving a thick stone door. Rumble. The door, easily over 50 centimeters thick, slid open to the sides under the strength of the knights. A training ground made of solid stone appeared before their eyes. The first thing Logan noticed was the display racks full of numerous swords, but his eyes soon shifted to the bookshelves beside it. Surprised at the out-of-place sight of the bookshelf in the training ground, Logan was still contemplating when the sword sage nonchalantly approached, pulled out a book, and tossed it to him. Heavenly Sky seemed too grandiose a name for an elementary swordsmanship manual, prompting an incredulous look from Logan towards Felix. It is indeed an elementary manual. If you train only this, it's perfect for wrecking your body. However, it has unique elements that make it worth reading. But Logan had never pinned high hopes on a swordsmanship manual in the first place. What about the certification? Tsk. Are you sure this is enough for you? There's such a thing as too little ambition. It's fine. Let me repeat. How about an intermediate manual? There are some quite decent ones. An absurd scene unfolded, where the giver seemed more desperate to offer more than the recipient could take. Yet, Logan's wishes remained unchanged. Could you just write me the certification separately? A note with no mention of the swordsmanship manual's name, stating that you give it to me. The sword sage sighed in disbelief, but soon nodded his head. If I give an intermediate manual, it would truly be a fair trade. That would then be the end of this connection. To Logan, that was the extent of it. No matter how delighted the counterpart might be, it was merely an aphrodisiac and a cure for impotence. Taking the certification placed upon the sword manual, Logan bowed his head. Thank you. With a sense of pride, Logan was examining the certification when Felix looked at him with a bemused voice. Are you not going to take the sword manual at all? My apologies. What on earth are you thinking to be so difficult to understand? The sword. Sage let out a light sigh at Logan's awkward laugh when suddenly another unexpected phrase followed. No matter how I think about it, this is not right. Pardon? Even if you're satisfied, I am not. This deal is not fair, I'll give you something else. Do you accept it? If only he would just cherish that feeling of owing me. However, it was difficult to refuse with the sword sage insisting so earnestly. I am truly fine with this, but, refusing further would be impolite. Even if it didn't feel like indebtedness, if both were satisfied with the transaction, the connection would last. With that thought, Logan began to feel a sense of anticipation. What could he possibly give? Considering the Sword Sage's pride, it wouldn't be something trivial. As Logan's heart pounded with speculation, Felix's voice solidified his expectations. I will personally teach you a technique worth your while. A lesson? A lesson from the kingdom's mightiest blade master? Intermediate techniques from renowned knight orders were untouchable, even for tens of millions of gold due to their nature as national secrets. And a lesson from the kingdom's strongest aura user, the Sword Sage, could be worth even more. Although it may be nothing special if it's too extravagant. This issue could actually pose a problem for Logan, making his expression complicated. I understand you're humble and don't seek great things. Pardon? Lost in the first ever assessment of his character that spanned both his past and current life, Logan listened further. But it's a gift, because I would feel troubled otherwise. Besides, wouldn't this further prove our connection? The kindly smiling Sword Sage offered something Logan couldn't refuse. No matter how much arcane knowledge of the sword existed, there was no reason to refuse the offer, especially from the strongest in the current era, imploring with such words. Moreover, as the Sword Sage said, it transcended the connection Logan originally wanted to make through the deal. This is a real jackpot. What was expected to be a future loss turned into a gain many times over. Resolved, Logan promptly knelt down on the spot. Thank you. That's more like it. You finally act like a youngster of your age. The Sword Sage, chuckling at the sight, stood up nimbly and walked towards Logan. With every step, his aura grew stronger, and by the time he was just 5 steps away, the suffocating pressure felt palpable just from looking at him. As he stood there, the Sword Sage drew his sword. Swoosh. Swallow. Logan couldn't say a word, just looked on, and a calm voice continued. Focus. I won't teach you kindly. Assessing the talent of a promising young man is one of an old man's pleasures. With that, the geniality faded from the Sword Sage's face, replaced by sheer solemnity. Draw your sword. Before he could finish speaking, the energy bursting from the tip of his sword began to shackle Logan's entire body. Ugh! Although he was told to draw his sword, doing so was difficult from the start. The hand reaching for the sword sheath at his waist trembled uncontrollably, unable to shake off the aura of the Sword Sage. So this is the power of an aura user. In his past life, he never even imagined directly confronting an aura user. During his time as a mercenary, they were neither allies nor enemies within reach. During the independent army days, allied aura users were too occupied to deal with him, and Empire's aura users were entities to be avoided at all costs. Therefore, this real first-hand experience with an aura user was invaluable. Damn it. Oh, but the gap in strength was even greater than expected. Forcing his trembling hands to move, a sudden question came to mind. Is this really something an aura user can do? If that were something all aura users could accomplish, then all the wars across the continent would have been decided by battles among aura users alone. This itself is a special technique. As his mindset changed, so did his approach. The force core in his heart vibrated, emitting powerful energy. The force, magnified by his 2 cores, amplified not his overall abilities, but his senses. Elevated to a near meditative state, his heightened senses began to analyze the energy constraining his body. Amplification, focus, disperse. The Sword Sage's naturally dispersed aura was concentrated at certain moments, exerting pressure on him. Yet that alone wasn't enough to fully restrict his movements. It reacts to the initiation of my movement, dispersing strength into the ether. While he understood this, how it was possible remained unknown. Still, a method to move came to mind act half a beat faster than the Sword Sage's timing. Just with this simple action, Logan was able to draw his sword. Clang! Indeed, you have talent. With an admiration-filled remark from the Sword Sage, the suppressing energy vanished in an instant, only to coalesce into his blade. Subsequently, a reddish blade began to overlay upon the sword. An aura blade? The sword sage's internal force and external aura merged to create a tangible blade of power, etching its image in Logan's senses. Oh no. This is! At that moment, when the light of realization gleamed in Logan's eyes, watch closely. This is the overbearing sword. Down came a giant red blade overhead, soaring well over 3 meters. The sheer force, tangible even from a distance, was impossible to counter. If you manifest it properly, it can be quite effective against lesser opponents. Watch carefully. Focus. The red blade descended slowly, ponderously above his head. I must dodge. Though he attempted to evade the plummeting sword, his body wouldn't budge. The aura that stemmed from the red sword infiltrated every inch, scrambling his senses. Feeling utterly powerless, as if his body refused to heed his commands, he realized. The sword's aura is strengthening the effect. Without the previous confrontation's experience, the principles would have been unfathomable. Even with his newfound understanding, no immediate counter came to mind. Right then, a subtle vibration in his body sparked a light in Logan's eyes. The intensified core versed his body in neutralizing the invasive energy, restoring his senses. This unforeseen situation left even Logan surprised. Huh? The sword sage let out an amused laugh as in a blink the red sword moved at unprecedented speed. Instinctively, Logan knew he couldn't dodge the incoming strike. Ah! In the nick of time, his sword wrapped in a golden glow and soared to meet the assault. Boom! An explosive sound propelled Logan back. Thud, thump. He crashed mightily against the training ground wall and tumbled to the floor. Barely raising his head, he grimaced and spat out blood. Cough. With a broken sword planted in the ground, he managed to prop himself up, and the knights could see the severity of his internal injuries. Yet the first word he uttered wasn't about his wounds, but about the sword. That wasn't an aura blade? Tickled, perhaps, by his inquiry, a smile crept across the sword sage's lips. Why would I teach you something you can't replicate? You watched well. Hearing the answer, a faint smile appeared on Logan's face as he lost consciousness. Rumble. Watching the sword sage emerge from the training ground, the knights all bowed their heads. Inside, you'll find a fainted lad. Treat him well in the infirmary. Pardon? The knights, likely confidants of a duke, seemed slow to react to the unexpected command. A guest? One question united their thoughts, but the sword sage didn't indulge their curiosity. I've provided first aid, so once he's fully restored, report to me. I have more to say to the lad. Yes. Nodding to the knight's reply, the sword sage smiled, lost in thought. Indeed, he's a notable one. Initially, the intention wasn't to deal heavy blows, but after being caught off guard by the lad's unexpected performance, the lesson became more earnest. Such is the way of learning growth comes with scars. Do I know a young one reminiscent of him? Recalling his own students within the Esperanza Knight Order, none seemed to match that aptitude. Certainly, he promises to be quite interesting. Sword Sage Felix Esperanza began to take a real interest in Logan. Regressor of the Fallen Family, Chapter 38. Logan does not use the highest quality potion given to him by the healer of the Esperanza Ducal House, but instead keeps it in his pocket. As expected from a ducal house to provide such a potion to an outsider, he muses. The potion was worth 500,000 gold, a staggering sum, which was difficult to acquire due to supply not meeting demand. Yet, Logan did not want to use it for his current injuries, thinking, I can heal without drinking it. His evolved power, his force, had healed his severe internal injuries within hours, allowing him to move about, which even led the healer to mistakenly think he had consumed the potion. However, full recovery would take a few more days. Please take care, Logan bids farewell, receiving an excessively polite escort from the knights of the ducal house, a stark contrast to his arrival. He manages a relaxed smile until he departs the duchy's estate, but the moment he turns away, his face contorts in pain. Walking on its own induced cold sweat and sharp pains shot through his head. Considering the severity of his injuries, it was remarkable that he could move at all. There's still much to gain, Logan reassured himself despite the pain. It wasn't just the highest quality potion he was referring to. Smiling through the pain, he reached into his pocket and felt a neatly folded piece of paper, a treasure more valuable than the potion. It was the coordinates to his personal residence's communication device, along with a message from the master swordsman who had invited him to reach out if he needed help with his swordsmanship. The fact that he was practically treated as a disciple was a result that exceeded his expectations. As he recovered from his injuries, Logan contemplated the sword techniques and the connections he had established with the master swordsman. They would be a significant asset in navigating the challenging future that lay ahead. With this thought, the pain seemed to lessen. Relaxed, he began to notice the beautiful scenery around him, the grand mansions in the center of Grang, the 1,000-year-old capital, which showcased various architectural styles reflecting different eras. Even for someone like Logan, who lacked knowledge about architecture, the beauty of the manors was apparent, and the elegant carriages added sophistication to the scenery. He resolved to protect and prevent the fall of such grandeur. As he entered the bustling streets, a carriage suddenly stopped beside him. "Oh my, isn't that young Master Logan? It's been a while," exclaimed a beautiful voice, one that he recognized. It was Reyna, the silver-haired beauty he'd met before, not on good terms, from the Wolves' ducal house, evident by the silver wolf emblem on her carriage. Despite his reluctance, he greeted her with, "It's been a while, Lady of House Wolves." The exchange between them was strained. Each wore a smile, but their eyes held a chill. Reyna mentioned Logan's recent involvement in a territory war, which piqued his concern since such matters were not typically discussed amongst the nobles of the capital. This revealed Reyna had some interest in him, which, despite their past engagement and breakup, was unwelcome attention. After a tense exchange regarding Reyna's inquiry about the sale of a weapon Logan had used, he managed to extricate himself from the conversation. He quickly left the scene, eager to distance himself from onlookers drawn by Reyna's presence. Wolves' ducal house already taking an interest. Logan reflected on the unexpected attention from Reyna's family, even though he had ties with them in the past. Back in his base, Logan shared with Philip, his associate, the reason behind his rough state, much to Philip's relief. Logan revealed his plans to Philip and asked him to continue managing the sale of Amphorex while he rested and worked on other things. He immersed himself in creating a detailed treatise on middle-grade swordsmanship, a task he found surprisingly enjoyable due to his amplified sensory effects from the Force Core. 1 week later, Logan completed the swordsmanship treatise. Meanwhile, Philip successfully sold all the amphoric they had, securing them a profit of 4.1 million gold. Logan was pleased with the financial success and planned to source necessary goods from the capital for his territory before returning home. As he looked towards the southwestern sky, he affirmed his determination to protect his lands, his eyes reflecting the red hue of the sunset. Regressor of the Fallen Family, Chapter 39. Yes, purchase food supplies with 1 million gold each month and send them to Teslon and McLean castles. Really? 1 million gold every month? Yes. What on earth? Are you planning to feed the territory's people all by yourself, young Lord Logan? Enough. At least for 1 year, I will buy continuously, so find out where to source it from. Aha, you're serious. I had no idea you cared so much for the people of your territory. Upon hearing Philip's words, Logan chuckled lightly. Caring for the people of my territory. Well, truthfully, it was simply out of necessity. The chronic food shortage in McLean Castle was not going to be resolved until next year at least. Even though we now have the Teslon plains, Teslon Castle has only ever produced just a bit more than what was required for self-sufficiency. Add to that the barrenness of McLean, and it ultimately still ends up in deficit. Moreover, it's county summer now. Food supplies stored over winter are depleting, and there is still a long way to go until the next harvest season. It's precisely the time just after the spring famine. It wouldn't be strange if there were people in McLean Castle dying from hunger. The labor of the territory's people was absolutely necessary for the work Logan planned to undertake in the future, so it was critical to preserve their strength as much as possible. But buying food is only a temporary measure. For the future, a more fundamental solution was necessary. Stop the chatter and go buy it. Is there a problem? No, there's no problem. With a long-term contract of more than a year, there would be many suppliers willing to provide. Besides, if we're buying in bulk, we might get it for even cheaper. Then proceed with that, and as soon as Impo Rick arrives, send him off. Prepare for business until he arrives. I will send a mercenary troop for transport escort, so make sure to get acquainted with their captain. After giving Philip the detailed instructions, Logan set out once more to find Knox for another request. You want me to find these people? Yes, with only a name and one or two features of their appearance. And we aren't even sure about their real names. Plus, we don't know where they live. Are you asking me to search the entire continent? This is tough. Can you do it? Just tell me that. I'd have to ask for a down payment of 100,000 gold. And I can't give you any guarantee about when they could be found. As soon as even one person is identified, contact me. I'll be in McLean territory. But may I ask why you want to find these people? That's none of your concern. For each person found, I'll pay the same amount as the down payment again, but only if that information is reliable. So find them as quickly as you can. Understood. Bang. Geez, what a temper. Knox's informant uttered in disbelief as the sound echoed in front of the empty doorway. Already having left the place, Logan was running towards the western gate, and his mind was racing amid the movement. The independence of the future. I have to recruit them. But as Knox said, they wouldn't be easy to find. The fact that they were wandering around unaffiliated, even after reaching the level of superhumans, meant each of them had a significant story. Maybe even the names Logan knew might be aliases. But there's no other way. I have to wait. He had to focus on growing his family's strength. If necessary, he should be ready to wage imperial wars without those talents, and even consider extreme measures if, once found, they reject his scouting offer, especially the one who has mainly been active as a mercenary for the Empire. While engrossed in these complicated thoughts, Logan even felt slightly desperate, despite things going well currently. Why am I in such a hurry? Slow down. There is still time. It's all right. Logan calmed his breathing with a soft murmur, steadying himself. Feeling anxious even after everything went better than expected in the capital was an issue. It's a compulsion. I need to clear my head for a while. As he acknowledged that fact, his pace noticeably slowed. Now was the time to engage in a more important transaction. He lifted his head, watching the sky in the distance, trying to regain some peace of mind. Just then, in the distance, he saw a massive tower. Ah, damn. He had resolved to take things slowly, but seeing his destination reminded him of all the things he still had to do. The Magic Tower. The Magic Tower, Mota, originated from magicians living together, pursuing the same path, and became an influence synonymous with magicians. They built high and giant towers, proclaiming their magic and power. Although the existence of magicians was rare, the group kept a formidable force equivalent to an army, despite their number being no more than a few hundred at most. Most magicians were dedicated to developing and researching their magic rather than engaging in conflict, and thus they would rarely be found outside the laboratories of the magic towers. Especially the lower-ranking magicians, in desperate need of mentors and learning, often belonged to a tower, staying close to their masters. Therefore, in a remote territory like McLean, it was a reality that the existence of magicians was hardly noticed. Not only are they hard to find, but they're also picky about the work. This was the main reason why you would hardly see magicians in wars, unless it was a conflict on the scale of a nation or in grand territories that maintained their own magic towers and magicians. And there were as many as 5 such towers in the capital of Grandia, Grand. Now Logan was heading to one of them, the Earth Tower, to the west of the capital. Ding-a-ling! Inside the massive 7-story magic tower painted in the hue of Los, the first floor was so empty it felt desolate. The vast first-floor space, easily surpassing 300 square meters Pyong, appeared lonely, with no one around, and the reception desk closest to the entrance required quite a walk to reach. At the reception, a young man donning an earthy Loess-colored robe, emblazoned with a stone symbol showing his affiliation with the Earth Tower, was nodding off, asleep. Excuse me. Tap tap. Huh! The dozing apprentice magician of the Earth Tower, Roy, jerked awake at the sudden voice. I'm sorry, guest. He quickly stood up, bowing profusely and apologizing, but on the inside he was still screaming. This is bad. Damn it. Visitors to the tower were mostly nobles, coming to purchase artifacts produced by the tower or to place orders, and the money they lavishly spent was the main source of income for the tower. Considering the cost that high-grade magicians would pour into a single magic experiment, the tower was constantly in need of funds, despite the substantial income. And with the tower's financial situation being as precarious as it was now, crossing a noble visitor's path could lead to disaster. Wait. As Roy lifted his head, what he saw vastly differed from his expectations. Sturdy boots and greaves, though worn and similarly conditioned armor. The flame emblem etched onto the half-plate mail was also unfamiliar. To cap it off, the face looked even younger than his brother's. In that instant, Roy's intuition kicked in. This guy's broke. Surely that realization lightened the weight of his blunder and put him at ease. What brings you here? He assumed the man before him was a greenhorn noble who had just come from the countryside. With that kind of attire, there's no way he has a meeting scheduled with high-grade magicians. They probably thought the magic tower, being renowned, would have artifacts on display, like any exhibition fools not knowing any better. And these greenhorns typically had the same excuse. I came to see some magic scrolls. Sure enough, his prediction hit the mark, and Roy discounted the guest as a greenhorn. Facial control, must keep a neutral face. Roy carefully tried to hide his ridicule as he quietly responded. Magic scrolls start at 1,000 gold for the first circle scrolls, 2,000 for the second circle, 5,000 for the third circle, 10,000 for the fourth circle. Do you have a particular type of scroll in mind? Disposable magic scrolls allowed anyone, even non-magicians, to use magic. Given the miracles they performed, the scrolls were not only difficult to produce, but also costly. Roy was sure the greenhorn would make awkward excuses as they turned away, overwhelmed by the price. But the stranger's reaction completely defied his expectations. The guy who just woke up, scanning him up and down, then his lips slightly curled up. It was clear what he was thinking. Logan did not want to argue with this pitiful fellow, so he briefly stated his business. Collapse magic scrolls, 150 of them. Excuse me? That took the man aback, his eyes widening. Collapse magic was a fourth circle earth attribute area spell, which, depending on the capacity of the caster, could crumble dozens of square meters of rock formations at once. Although it was a formidable spell, it had certain drawbacks. Prolonged casting time, obvious signs precast, and it was ineffectual against living beings or other materials than soil and rock, making it practically useless in warfare. However, in other applications, the story was different. They're perfect for construction. Logan planned to use them to accelerate the development of the mines and to resolve additional issues in other territories. As I mentioned, collapse magic is part of the fourth circle scrolls, and as such, each scroll costs 10,000 gold. And you intend to purchase 150 of them? Yes. You do realize that if you simply make the request and fail to pay, it could create a very embarrassing situation for you, guest. The man frowned slightly and scanned him from head to toe once more. A sigh was involuntary at the ridiculous threat, but Logan had no intention of dealing with this fool any longer. It's collapsed scrolls. If you cannot fulfill that, summon someone who can. Excuse me? Can you handle the sale? If so, let's make the transaction right away. Logan took out an account verification issued by Cooper's from his pocket. Even this document was protected against forgery through magical means. The man was startled upon seeing the listed 4 million gold. Collapsed scrolls, 150 of them. That makes it 1.5 million gold. It's a substantial amount. I wonder if you can handle it. Following Logan's words, the man's complexion turned pale. I'm sorry. Such a transaction is beyond what I can handle. The man's snide demeanor had vanished completely. Looking at his trembling hands, Logan smirked. Then bring someone who can take responsibility, right? Yes. Oh, yes. Please wait for a moment. I will return immediately. The receptionist magician scrambled away, and soon after, thud thud, from the stairs where the man had hurriedly ascended, an elderly magician nearly tumbled down as he descended with haste. Who is it? Oh, you? Amid the clamor, the magician, staggering to maintain his balance, approached with a grin that was strange for his years. The beard sprouting beneath his chin was half white, yet despite the age it implied, his shifty eyes and lips gave off a deceitful impression. Oh, what a precious guest! I apologize for the late welcome. I am Ledios Great, the Tower Master of the Earth Tower. I'm sorry, but may I ask which family you are from? This introduction was enough to surprise Logan. Head of a magic tower? Even though 1.5 million gold was a considerable sum, it was essentially only half a year's budget of a barony. He had heard that the Earth Tower was not doing well financially, but the head of one of the 5 major towers rushes out for this amount? Yet the strong magical presence he discerned, the heartbeat of a magician, revealed an undisputed 5 magic circles. A 5th circle magician, no matter where in the tower, this was a master capable of holding an elder position or higher. The situation of this tower might be more serious than I thought. Even amidst the unexpected situation, Logan took note of this information as he bowed his head in response. I am Logan McLean. McLean? As he heard the name, the Tower Master's expression was a mix of confusion and realization, but he quickly regained composure and spoke with a forced laugh. Ah ha 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 ha. I apologize. My lack of exposure led to my mistake. Please, allow me to guide you. Follow me. I would much prefer we have this conversation in my office. The Earth Tower, one of the 5 prominent towers, and its master's submissive attitude was hard to get used to, but not without its advantages. A weakness in a trading partner is my benefit. Logan smiled and nodded. I'm just from a small territory in the southwest. You don't need to concern yourself. However, I have more than enough ability to make the purchase, unlike that friend there who doubted me. Ah, ha ha ha. It seems our apprentice made a mistake. My apologies. I will give him a stern talking to. No, it's nothing to worry about. It's a trivial matter, saying otherwise, but his steely glare briefly directed at the pale-faced apprentice was undeniably sharp. Observing this interaction hinted at the smug tower master's unpleasant nature, but Logan had no reason to care. Tsk. He brought this on himself. For now, completing this trade successfully was of utmost importance. Let's see if the Earth Tower can meet my demand. The more effective spell for his purpose would have been the 4th circle explosion scrolls from the Magic Tower of Fire. However, as explosion was classified as a combat spell, it was much more expensive compared to equivalent magic, and purchasing a large quantity of military-grade scrolls would attract unnecessary attention. Therefore, Logan chose the Collapse Magic and the Earth Tower instead. Well, it's not like there's only one magic tower. Magicians of the Royal Tower who specialized in one attribute were more skilled, but the class magicians of the Royal Tower could produce similar items as well. If needed, I can split the order. Judging by the flow of the conversation, it seemed he would be able to close the deal on even better terms than expected. Logan followed Ledios with a faint smile.